Hello, everybody. It's 3 o'clock. We'll get started in a couple of minutes. I was a little late getting on. Um, if you could type in the chat box where you are located, that would be most useful. Some of the ingredients I will be talking about are area specific, either within the US or internationally. So if you could do that, that would be helpful. Hey, Laura from Lexington. Yes, at least we had 2 Kentucky people. It's always good. Anybody else? North Carolina State, Denmark. Wow, that's a long ways from home for me. Illinois. Okay, so Midwest. I'm sure there'll be some from Florida come on later. Oh, New Hampshire. That's nice. Lexington, North Carolina. Wow. Okay. It is 3 o'clock. This is being recorded. I hope it's supposed to be South Africa. Wow. Let me make sure it's being recorded. Yes. Burkina Faso. Okay, so we do have some international ones, which I have incorporated into my presentation. Okay, my name is Dr. Jacquie Jacob, and I am the poultry extension specialist, one of 2 here at the University of Kentucky in Lexington, Kentucky. And as part of my my work, I am the whoops, hopefully we get this going well. Hopefully this works. Please let me know if it is not. Since I am presenter and host, I cannot see the chat box or the Q&A very well. It will pop up and tell me if there's something there. If it's something that's a clarification of what I've been talking about, I will interrupt myself and answer the question. Otherwise, we will save them to the end. But if you're like me, if you don't put the question in right away, you forget about it at the end. So as I said, I am the coordinator for the small and backyard flocks community of practice, which is a part of e-extension, which is the electronic version of the cooperative extension service here in the United States. Each state has their own extension service, and this is a national program for online use. So you can see there our website and our Facebook page, as well as my email. I will put this back up at the end so that you can get it. So the topic for today is food for chickens. Why not? Okay. Okay. So this is pretty much an outline of what I plan to talk about, a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll go over the easiest feeding method. Whoops. Easiest feeding method and what not to feed with it when you're doing that. And we will discuss some other options that you can use other than the easiest method. So for the introduction, I just want to look at basic poultry nutritional needs are very similar to human nutrition needs. Our human nutrition needs, and so we just meet those in different ways. So the grains that we provide and that make up a large portion of poultry diets are supplied by grains. The proteins, which basically is the amino acids, there are essential and non-essential amino acids, and those are provided in the protein section of the plate. Minerals, in particular calcium, from the dairy, and then trace minerals and vitamins, and some of the other minerals are provided through, fruits and vegetables like we eat. So it's comparable. We just use different things to provide those nutritional needs. Before we get into that too much, I just, as part of the introduction, want to remind you that chickens are not cows, they're not goats, they're not sheep. So while we may free range chickens, or and that this presentation deals with chickens, it does not deal with some of the other poultry species, although some of the things discussed will be comparable, but the digestive system of waterfowl is a slightly different than it is for chickens. Turkeys are pretty much similar to chickens, but waterfowl can eat more forage because of more active cica. So the easiest method, of course, for feeding any poultry flock is a complete feed. You just buy it from the store. It's the easiest way to do it. They are formulated to meet the chicken's nutritional needs. The protein, and thus, the amino acids, vitamins, and minerals are all related to the dietary energy level and the amount of feed the chickens will eat to meet their energy needs. So if you have lower energy in the complete feed, they'll eat more of the feed, so you can add less protein, vitamins, and minerals and meet those needs. If it has a high energy density, then you'll need more of the nutrients to balance that, because they'll eat less of the feed. So if we look at what poultry diets do to meet those nutritional needs, energy, as I said, comes from grains. In the US, that is mainly corn, although sorghum is used in some parts of the southern US since it grows better there. Barley or wheat are used in parts of Canada and Europe because corn has to be imported, and so they use some of the alternative grains. Naked oats has been researched together with pasture poultry. Some countries use rice. So there's a lot of different things that can be used depending on the cost and the location. For protein, soybeans are the main protein source in the US. They contain an anti-nutritional factor, so need to be roasted before the whole soybeans can be used. Soybean meal, extracting the oil, leaving the meal behind, also deactivates the anti-nutritional factors. And soybean meal is the main type of protein used in US poultry diets. Some use fish meal, although it's, if you want a vegetarian diet, then of course you can't have fish meal. Meat and bone meal is also sometimes used. It is the byproduct mostly from pork because of the whole mad cow thing. That they have stopped using beef. And it is a byproduct of slaughter that would go to landfills if not incorporated into animal feeds. Canola meal is something used in Canada and Europe more so than the soybeans. Some areas use sunflower seed meal, but because of the variability, it's a little hard. Um, because they are corn, soy-based diets, and the protein of soybeans is low in methionine, typically they use synthetic amino acids, methionine and lysine for poultry, especially methionine, since soybeans are low in methionine, as are most legumes. By doing that, they can have a lower total protein in the diet and meet the amino acid requirements. If they don't use synthetic methionine and lysine, then they have to overfeed protein to meet the methionine requirement, which results in wasted nitrogen, which goes out in the poop and becomes an environmental problem, as well as causes higher levels of ammonia. Synthetic amino acids are being hotly debated in the organic poultry community, but as of now, limited synthetic methionine and lysine can be used. Calcium, especially for bone growth and eggshell development, is usually provided in the feed with limestone, dicalcium phosphate, which also provides phosphorus, and oyster shells and things of that nature. And the minerals and vitamins we typically think of as coming from the fruits and vegetables, but in order to provide them in the complete feed, the main method is the use of trace minerals and vitamin premixes. And of course, you can get the feed as a mash or as a pellet, which makes bite-sized meals. Or if the chickens are small, then chick starter is usually a crumble because they can't eat the large pellets. So, as I said, the complete feed is formulated to meet the nutritional needs of the chicken. So it is very important to not dilute this complete feed with scratch grains, cracked corn, or other energy sources, because this will result in nutritional deficiencies. And I see them when people call me, they have feather pecking, they have signs of disease, which are, could be a vitamin deficiency, you get low performance, you start seeing prolapses in laying hens or breeders. And ultimately, if the dilution is strong enough and done long enough, death can result. So it is extremely important that you do not dilute do not dilute a complete feed with scratch grains, cracked corn, or other energy sources. So why not? Well, as I said, the diets are formulated to meet the nutrients with the energy content. So if you dilute that by feeding an extra energy source, you look at my plate, you're basically overloading the diet that they are consuming as a whole with energy. So they're going to eat less of the complete feed. And as I said, the feed is formulated to meet the energy with the amount they will eat, the nutrients with the amount they'll eat based on energy. So if they're eating this energy source, they're not getting enough of the other nutrients. And if you think about it, if you give kids, and hey, adults as well, French fries, which are potatoes, of course, and a high source of energy, then the chance that they will then eat a nice nutritional meal goes down. So do not dilute the nutrients with scratch grains, cracked corn. The only time that I recommend this extra energy source is in the winter, because they need a little extra energy to keep warm. So you're either spending money on supplying heat, or you are providing it in the diet with an extra energy source. So there is a place for, these extra energy sources, but it should not be to dilute nutrient content of a complete feed. But, your chickens like to forage. So what can you do, right? Instead of spreading scratch grains or cracked corn, try spreading the complete feed for them to forage on. They like to forage. They'll forage all day long. And so if you spread the feed on, where they're foraging, then they'll get that forage activity, which is improved animal welfare. But you're not diluting their nutrients, so they're getting enough nutrients for their needs. So if you can't give scratch grains as a treat for your chickens, I don't recommend it. A handful maybe, but I would not recommend it. There are alternatives you can use to give treats to your birds and to use that foraging behavior. Table and kitchen scraps are very useful. They're fruits and vegetables are a good source of vitamins and minerals. So you're not diluting it, you're adding to the nutrient consumption. I wouldn't feed a lot of high energy kitchen scraps. Potato peels are all right, but I wouldn't feed potatoes, that sort of thing. Some forages, especially new growth, if it's old growth, then the nutrients that they can get out of it are very low. When I was working in Mozambique many, many, many years ago, we had them plant sweet potatoes. So sweet potato is very easy to plant. It has a lot of foliage. And so every day they would harvest a little bit of forage from the plot and feed that to their birds. It reduced the feed costs, especially with the ducks that we were using, but it also helped redirect any feather pecking in the laying flocks. I wouldn't recommend it for meat birds that grow, especially the broilers, because they can't consume enough of it. Mealworms are another item you can buy in the store. This is more protein than energy, so you are not diluting the nutrients as much. And mealworms are larvae of darkling beetles, which are a pest in poultry houses. They eat insulation and all sorts of things. So if you're feeding mealworms, make sure they're dead mealworms. I wouldn't recommend live mealworms because, they can become darkling beetles and become an issue in your poultry house. But it's very important that whatever you give, they finish up in the day and you throw it out, what they don't eat. It's important to not let them go moldy. Mold can lead to botulism with the growth of Clostridium botulinum, or mycotoxin production, which is from the mold itself. Even if you remove what appears to be the moldy part of kitchen scraps, the mycotoxins can still remain in what's left. So if it goes moldy, you have to throw the whole thing out. I also recommend, the forages. It's less likely to go moldy, but keep an eye on it. Another thing that you can do is let them clean up post-harvest gardens. You don't want them running around in your garden before you harvest. This is, of course, a pre-harvest picture, but chickens in a garden, vegetable garden, human food garden can result in salmonella. contamination of your products, and many of the products are used raw, raw cucumbers, raw salad, that kind of thing. And so you don't want to let them in your garden when there is product there waiting to be harvested. But after you have harvested everything, let them in to clean up what's left. They love to forage. They'll break up some of the material that's still there. We had a project when I worked in Florida with a 4-H club. We had a poultry house, and it had 2 separate doors to go outside into runs. We only opened one at a time. One was for the chickens to run around in, and the other one was for a vegetable garden. And then when we harvested the vegetable garden, we swapped. And so the chickens could now go into the post-harvest field, and you could prepare where they were, fertilizing it, ready for replanting material the next season. So while they're cleaning up what's left of the plants and pooping everywhere, they are fertilizing it and getting it ready. So you can go back and forth depending on the time of year. Okay, the utilization of kitchen waste at about 20% of all they eat can help reduce the cost of poultry feed, and it can improve the burden and dangers related to the disposal and poor management of domestic waste on the environment. So fruits and vegetables are important sources of vitamins and minerals. Again, don't let them go moldy. Table scraps can be, zucchini peels. You can use banana peels. You can use pineapple peels. I mean, you can use pretty much anything. It is, of course, going to vary from season to season. So there is some differences. But again, it's not high energy, so you don't want to give bread. Bread is high energy and will dilute the nutrient content. But by giving them some of the table scraps, you can get extra vitamins and minerals to the flock. So that's one thing you can do to help reduce your feed costs when using a complete feed in a backyard flock. But you need to feed properly for a complete feed to be effective for the entire flock. So plenty of feeder space so that all chickens can eat at the same time. Chickens are social animals, and when one eats, they all want to eat. So make sure they can do that they can all eat at the same time. If you don't, the ones lower in the pecking order are not going to get enough feed and therefore not enough nutrients, and you can start having health and welfare problems. It is also important to have the feeder at the right height. This avoids feed wastage and therefore helps with your bottom line. It also prevents contamination from the chickens pooping in the feeders. So the correct height for most feeders is the lip at the height of the back of the chicken, as shown in the image there. Let me see, that got a question answer. Are there any veggies that you would recommend? I'll get to those soon for the other veggies. Oops. Oh, gotta get back to here. Okay, so feeder space and height are important. You can see that this feeder is at the right height. It also has dividers in there because they'll, spoon it out if you're not careful. And so it helps with that. So the one on the left and the one on the right are too low. I mean, the one on the left is obviously too low. It's at the floor. The one on the right has been raised, but not quite high enough so that they can spoon out the feed, which you can see under the feeders. If they forage in it, okay, but that's your bottom line getting spread around there. There are some creative alternatives to that type of feeder that will reduce feed wastage. These are some of the ones that I saw online. Some you can buy, some you can make. But basically they put their head in to eat it, so they can't really spoon it out. They can't get in there and contaminate it. The only thing you have to be careful of is to make sure that they eat up all the feed, because any feed left behind that sits around for a long time can become moldy. So make sure that they're getting fresh feed, that you're removing any stale feed, any feed that has lots of fines in it, that the fines will get left behind because they are, they pick on size. So they'll take the biggest particles first and the fines will get left behind, and then you'll get a whole pile of fines. It's different options you can use. I liked these ones where they're using piping to do it. And again, there's many different designs for that. I might have lifted the one in the middle up a little higher to prevent spooning out. But I don't know how far down the feed goes in terms of being able to eat it all. The one on the right is a trough type feeder. I would recommend raising it a little bit more, maybe put another block under each side. And when you're calculating feeder space, both sides count. I would even think about extending the roofing a little bit, because it's outside, and if it rains, it's more likely to get wet. If you had it a little bit long, wider, it might protect the feed a little bit more. There are these new feeders on the market now that are supposed to be rodent proof, keep your mites and rats down, especially if feed gets left overnight. So there are some you can purchase. There are designs you can purchase to make your own. You can, look at their plans, and if you're a good, carpenter, you could create one your own. The cover only comes up when the chicken steps on the counterbalance, and then it closes when they get off. So it helps prevent some of the rodents getting into it. But if you're using trough feeders, positioning of the troughs is extremely important. In this house, the troughs are over what could be roost areas. And so, for the guy in the middle, it's perfect for her because, she can't get in it. She can't waste it so much, but she can still eat. But the one across from her, it's too low for her. She can get in there and spoon it around and waste feed. And then, the one in the back, you can see that she can even get into the feeder. She can poop in it. She can use her feet to kick it out in addition to her beak. So that's, bottom line profits, or, just the cost of your feed if you're just doing it as a hobby. So as I said, the easiest way is the complete feed, but there are other feeding options, and your choice of options depends on what your big why is. I mean, why do you want to go away from the complete feeds? Is it to reduce feed costs? Is it to use up available resources that you have so that you're reducing the environmental burden of those resources? Is it to make eating fun for chickens? Is it to do something organic? I mean, there are many different reasons, and your choice of other options will depend on what you're trying to achieve by looking for different options. There are two main options: mixing your own feed, using your own grains and mixing with a protein supplement, or starting from scratch. And we'll look at both of those. So using your own grains and mixing with a protein supplement that has vitamin and minerals included is the most popular and most likely to reduce feed costs because you are producing your own grains. Or you can buy it cheaply depending on what you have. The protein supplements that have the vitamin and minerals included are sold online. And at some feed stores, there are a variety. I think Fetrel is the most commonly purchased, but I am not promoting it. It's just the one I hear about the most. But if you are using your own grains, you have to watch out for molds in your grains. And again, just picking out the moldy grains, the whole batch is going to have mycotoxins. And so you have to be careful. That's an issue that, the University of Kentucky grows our own corn for use in our livestock feeds. And the molds were quite high this year. So when we mix our own feeds, we use mold inhibitors and or mold binders. So the mold inhibitors prevent more mold growth, whereas the mold, it should be mycotoxin binders, sorry, not mold binders. It binds up the mycotoxins that might be there so that they do not affect the birds. So the use of whole grains is together with the balancing concentrate is increasing in its use in some regions of Europe, Canada, and Australia. They have found that feeding whole grains improves gut development, especially the gizzard, because of the work that they have to do. But if you do that, what's this? Some feed mills will sell protein, but yeah. Okay, you need to provide grit to the flock so that they can digest the whole grains. Oh, I forgot. So here are some examples of grit. For those that don't know what grit is, it's basically just some pebbles or ground up granite or whatever that the particle size depends on the age of the birds. They consume that, it gets into the gizzard, and it helps with the grinding of things that are not already ground. You don't typically need grit if you're using, complete feed, or if your grains are already ground when mixed with the protein supplement. But if you're using whole grains or forage, then grit is extremely important to help with the digestion of those materials. So, as I said, the using your own grains and mixing with the protein supplement is the most commonly used and usually the most cost-effective method. But you can also mix your own feed starting from scratch. This can be very difficult. You have to source a variety of ingredients required at a price that helps you reduce feed costs. It's unlikely that you can mix be cheaper than feed companies, which can purchase these ingredients in bulk. So if you have a cheap source, you can maybe make it work. Um, but making a complete feed with your own ingredients, you're not likely to do it cheaper than the feed companies. This is just to give you an example of, the different feed formulations that they have for different ages of laying hens and for broilers. You don't need to know them. It just gives you an idea of the ingredients that they're using for their diets. One of the other things that you can do is to provide a mineral block for the chickens. And this is an example of one by Purina. It includes cracked corn, barley, milo, or sorghum, whole wheat, cane molasses, oyster shell flour, sunflower seed, soybean meal, and many other things that they don't always list. It is not a complete ration, despite all these variety of things included. If you look at the nutrition, it's only 9% crude protein, 2.5% fiber, which is, enough to be helpful, but not to overburden it, and 4% fat. So it is supplying energy as well, but you also are getting protein, and they're not going to consume a lot of it. One block can last for over a month, depending on how many birds in the flock. They do provide pecking alternatives and supplements for free range diets. They do reduce feather pecking in the flock. They're great for wintertime supplementation if you're free ranging, when forage is not usually growing very well in the winter. And so yes, time is very important when mixing your own feed. That's why I say you can't really make it worthwhile. The block, although they picture a laying hen on there, it can be used by a variety of different poultry species, although it's only recommended for birds over 18 weeks of age, not really recommended for younger birds. It gives laying hens an extra boost with the oyster shell for calcium, and it has some of the other needed flocks. So that is one way you can help when mixing your own feed. Oops. So if you're starting from scratch and getting some of the common ingredients, the corn, soybean meal, and trace, the vitamin mineral premixes and that kind of stuff, you can use alternative ingredients, and that will vary from where you are in either the United States or worldwide as to what is available for you to use. And your choice of alternative ingredients, you have to balance the cost of the ingredients with performance. You can sometimes reduce feed costs by using some of these alternative ingredients, but it could adversely affect performance. So maybe, if you're a backyard flock or even a commercial operation, you can make money with the lower performance if the feed costs are lower. So make sure you have the business plan and you do all the math to figure out the costs of your feed and the resulting performance. Oops. Come on. So you have to look at alternative ingredients that meet the various nutrient requirements. So we started off by talking about energy, that all the other nutrients have to be balanced with the energy content in the feed. And we talked about corn being the main grain used in the US, barley and wheat maybe in Canada and Europe, sorghum in some parts of the US. And the research coming out of, where's Mike? Mike Luburn is in Purdue, I think. has been doing a lot of research on naked oats. You can also add some oils or fats to help with the energy content. So if you're looking for alternative grains, there are a number of other grains that you can use. There's a number of millets: pearl millet, finger millet, foxtail millet. Pearl millet is the one most commonly used, grown in southeastern US, along with the sorghum. So those are two options. I've seen it grown in Africa as well. So the sorghum and the millet, I think, are from there, are alternatives to the corn. There aren't a lot of GMO varieties of millets, and so if you're going organic and you want non-GMO, most of the corn in the US is GMO. Organic corns are usually imported from countries like India and Argentina, where my organic certification would be questioned. Some countries use broken rice as an alternative. Rye, they've come up with a modern hybrid type of rye of late. Rye is typically not recommended for poultry diets because of the anti-nutritional factors in it, but this new modern hybrid type is supposed to be low in those, so you don't get a lot of pasty butts associated with some of the anti-nutritional factors in rye. Triticale is another one. I don't think there's that much of it produced, but again, it depends on where you live. Buckwheat is an option. There is a feed mill in Minnesota that most of their diets are buckwheat based. They make organic diets. The Buckwheat Producers Association or something, they have their own feed mill. It's a cooperative, I think, and you can buy poultry feed, or they sell poultry feed to others, and most of them are buckwheat based, so that's a possibility. There are a number of root crops which typically you see in some of the third world countries, cassava, and it's not just the roots, but the peels and the leaves. How much you can use, if any, depends on the variety and how it's processed. Yams are similar. Roots, peels, and leaves can all be used for different types of nutrients. Sweet potatoes, as I said, you give the leaves. You can also use the roots and the peels, and potato root and peels can also be used. I'll be talking about free choice feeding of poultry, and Dr. Ann Fanatico has done a lot of research on the use of potatoes as the energy source in her poultry diets. She boils them first, I believe. Some crop byproducts, cereal brands, whether wheat, rice, maize meal after they've extracted the oil, cottonseed meal after they've extracted the oil. That depends on the variety of cottonseed. Cottonseed does have some factors in it that can affect egg production and egg quality, so you need to know that they are the more recent varieties of cotton. Groundnut or peanut meal is, from peanut oil, can also be used. And I always read that you shouldn't feed your chickens avocados, but some of the research that I've seen is that avocado, meal can be done after you extract the oil. So avocados, of course, have that thing in the middle, the kernel in the middle. And I've even seen research using the kernel, drying it and grinding it up as use in poultry feeds. but avocado meal has been used. Sunflower seed bran, which is a byproduct from milling of sunflower seed. That's not after the oil comes out, that's sunflower seed oil. I mean, sunflower seed meal, but the bran is when they mill sunflower seeds. Coconut bran, which is what they called it in the paper that I read, it does the residue after oil extraction. So I don't know why they don't call it coconut meal. And then cashews, which are very popular in many areas, especially Africa, where I spent a lot of time. And for those that don't know, this is how cashews are grown. They come on a tree, they have a fruit and the nut at the bottom. That nut is surrounded by a very, very corrosive material. They have to burn that off without burning the nut. So sometimes when they are processing the nut, they do get different fragments of the nut, and they call that cashew nut bran. But it also has a fruit. Some people use it. When I was in Mozambique, cashew season was, if you use the fruit, you can make a nice, kids drink. But if you let it ferment, it's really potent. But the fruit pulp left over from the cashew fruit can also be fed. Distillers grains, although that's typically more of a protein, brewers grains as well. And then there are byproducts from biodiesel production. One is glycerol. Each liter of biodiesel yields 70 grams of glycerol, which can be added to the diet. Lecithin is another one, but it's from processing soy oil for human consumption. Once they've extracted the oil, they have to process it before it's fit for human consumption. Some byproduct, again, depending on where in the world you are, palm kernel meal, baker's meal. So, things left over from the bakery, that's waste materials. Sugar beet pulp can also be used. Animal bioprocessing products, poultry meal, feather meal, blood meal. Often those are protein more than energy, but you do get some energy from those. All of those materials are rendered, so they don't even look anything like the original material. It kills off any, bacteria or whatever. It breaks down the feathers and whatever. It's all processed. And again, if it's not used for livestock feeds, then it is a waste product that goes to landfills. Soybean oil, corn oil, poultry fat, animal fat, lard, which is usually pigs, palm oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, groundnut oil, which is peanut oil. But insect oils are becoming a new thing. Here in Kentucky, we have a company that raises black soldier fly larvae, and you can either buy it as the larva, dead, of course. You can get it extracted with the oil out of it, so defatted, has higher proteins in it. And then, of course, the oil that they take out can also be added as a source of energy. Molasses can be used, beet or sugarcane, beet mostly in the US, especially Minnesota, sugarcane for some of the more tropical countries. In terms of protein, as I said, they use mostly soybean meal, fish meal, meat and bone meal, canola, and of course the synthetic methionine. So one of the alternatives that people have started using is microalgae. Algae can affect the fatty acid profile of the products, whether it's eggs or meat. In this case, it's a benefit because it increases the omega-3s, especially DHA, which is very important for brain development of young children, as well as maintaining brain function for adults. A lot of people have started using algae instead of flaxseed because it's easier to digest. Flaxseed, which is also high in omega-3s, um, you can't really grind it. You have to roll it to try and break it up. Otherwise, the flaxseed goes all the way through, and they don't digest it at all or get anything from it. So if you're trying to increase the fatty acid profile, then algae has been very successful in that. You can use a variety of um, seafood byproducts: crab meal, shrimp meal, mussel meal, crawfish meal, again, depending on where you are located. Um, since I'm deathly allergic to all of those, I don't know what the effect would be on the products, but I doubt, since they digest it and make their own products, I doubt it would be an issue. Some other byproducts: corn or maize gluten meal, wheat bran, rice bran, have also been used. A variety of legumes can be used. Many of them contain anti-nutritional factors that may limit their use. Legumes includes the soybeans, of course, but faba beans, field peas, chickpeas, cowpeas. Cowpeas definitely need to be roasted. And one article said that they were a natural dietary methionine source for those that are trying to reduce the use of synthetic methionine. But at the same time, the various problems associated with cowpea use could limit how much they can be used. Field peas are quite common in Canada and Europe, not so much here in the States, but they can be used. Again, the insects, entomophageny is, foggy is insect eating, but price, legislation, and food safety concerns have limited their use in the past. The black soldier fly larva, I am told, has been approved by the powers to be in the US anyway, I think Europe as well, for use in, first it was approved for aquaculture, and now for poultry. Mealworms, which we talked about, is the larva of darkling beetles. Earthworms are another one. They can digest waste, and then, to help reduce the burden of that, and then feed them to your chickens. Grasshoppers, locusts, and crickets can all be done. Fly maggots, although that tends to turn some people off, they are a good protein source. And termites, some kinds of termites, especially I was in Zimbabwe, and they had a variety of different types of termites. Some termites produce a poison if eaten, so you can't use those. Some termites, depending on whether it's the soldier or the whatever other termites in a nest, the soldiers tend to bite the inside of the chicken's mouth and cause problems. So you need to know what type of termites you are using in order to feed them to your chickens. Water hyacinths, which can often, clog up water canals. Duckweed does the same thing. They are high in protein with amino acid profiles that are comparable to soybean and cottonseed meal. Cassava leaves are often a good source of protein. They have to be dried, though, before they are fed. Calcium, again, for bone and eggshell development. Mineral availability in most plant feedstuffs, such as the cereals and the pulses and whatever. The availability of the minerals is low because of the phytate content in plant material. But for many decades now, phytase, which is an enzyme that breaks down phytate, has been supplemented to poultry diets to increase the mineral availability to a large degree. This is especially important for phosphorus because the Phytate phosphorus is not available, so it passes through in the manure. And then if you don't spread your manure properly, then you get phosphorus runoff into the water and you get all sorts of environmental damage being done. So if you're looking for alternatives, there's a variety here. Eggshells can be fed back to the chickens as long as they're dried, ground up a little bit, because if there's albumin there, they'll get a taste for it and they could start breaking the eggs to eat them. Seashells of any kind, mussel shells, conch shells. I was in Haiti, and in one place that had a whole pile of conches. Bone meal, again, another one of those byproducts that, if not fed in livestock feeds, is goes to landfill. When I tried looking for alternative feedstuffs, well, in Africa or the Caribbean, bone meal was something that was easily available because they would eat the meat and then have all this bone left over. So if they dried it and ground it up, they could feed it to their chickens as a source of calcium. Leucaena, also called horse tamarind, lead tree, white popinic, and God, I'm terrible today. That various parts of it can be used for different things. The nutritional value of the young leaves, pods, and seeds is comparable to alfalfa. Of course, with the high fiber content, you can't put more than 1 or 2% in the feed. The fresh stuff has more crude protein and lower crude fiber than the mature stuff, so you have to be selective on which plants you harvest from. The dry matter is about 57%. It has calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, potassium, sodium. Sodium chloride are essential nutrients. Also has iron. Corn cobs are a good source of vitamin A, C, and B vitamins. So if you have cobs left over, you can either break them up, grind them up and use in the feed, or you can just give the cobs to the chickens. A number of seaweeds, which are macroalgae, can be used. There are brown, red, and green types. The brown are typically the kelps that you see, and a lot of kelps are used in human food as well as can be used in poultry feed. So seaweeds typically absorb the inorganic compounds from their seawater and use them for their metabolism. So minerals and other trace elements can be absorbed by the plants, but there are concerns about the iodine content. Some seaweeds can have high iodine content that is too high for the birds. There's also concerns about them bringing up heavy metals as well. You have to be really careful of the salt content. Too much salt can cause diarrhea in your birds. And of course, there's seasonal variation in the nutrient content of the seaweeds. Some seaweeds are farmed, some seaweeds are harvested in nature. Kelp, as I said, many different types of sea kelp, and different parts have different things in them. The beta carotene, which is a precursor of vitamin A, they do have some fiber, protein, amino acids. They have a lot of minerals, and they contain the vitamins A, D, E, C, and some of the B vitamins. So dried kelp is often added to some of the organic poultry feeds, trying to reduce the use of synthetic minerals, well, not synthetic, synthetic vitamins, but also trying to replace some of the mined minerals. There are many different types of seaweed. The brown seaweed is native to Japan. And in addition to having all the vitamins and minerals, it has also shown to have antioxidant properties, which are useful for the health of the birds. Sugar kelp, which is higher in carbohydrates as well as the minerals and vitamins, can be used. Depending on the country, coconut meat, which is the grated and squeezed coconut fruit, can be used for vitamins and minerals. If you burn the coconut husks and harvest the ash, that has some of the trace minerals. In the United States, wood ash has sometimes been used, especially from oak. As I said before, pineapple peel, avocado seed meal have some minerals and vitamins that are useful for the birds. And the water hyacinths, which we talked about, also have good vitamin and mineral content. The main concern when you read the different vitamin contents of some of the things I talked about before, vitamin K is of major concern because it's not listed as much. Liver meal, of course, is going to be high in vitamin K. Vitamin K is important in blood clotting, and so is important for the health of the birds and preventing blood spot eggs and that kind of thing. Green vegetables are, especially spinach, but cabbage, lettuce, any of the green vegetables also can have vitamin K. Spinach is particularly high. Some algae can have vitamin K. Fermented soybean products that are usually produced for human consumption can also have vitamin K. And as I said, fruits and vegetables, the peels appear to have higher vitamin K content than do the fleshy portions. So, if you peel an apple or peel a squash or whatever, it has higher vitamin K content than the actual fruit or the squash. There are some products that have other properties that can be useful. I'm running over, sorry. Grape pomace is an antioxidant activity, and tomato pomace is an alternative to vitamin C, which can help with stress. Depending on the company, we already talked about the coconut meat, but it is also has prebiotic properties. So, probiotics provide the bacteria, the good bacteria, whereas prebiotics provide the food for the prebiotics based on their mannose-based polysaccharides. Excuse me. So it behaves like yeast mannan, which is like biomass that you can buy and use in feeds. Coconut meat tends to do that. And the leucaena that we talked about earlier also has anti-helmintic properties. So if worms are an issue, that could also help with that. If you're in the tropics, you get cassava, potato, yam, both the roots and the peels. Jack bean seeds after boiling are useful. The sponge gourd, also known as the Egyptian cucumber, the fruit can be used. Plantain and banana peels can be used. And a very popular tree that they are growing in or introducing to many parts of the world is moringa. The leaves, pods, and flowers all have high nutrient content, depending on the part. And they are trying to introduce it for human medicine, but it can also be used for poultry. So another option is free ranging. You still need to provide a feed of some sort, whether it's a complete feed or a feed you mixed yourself. You also need to provide grit because, as I said, if they are consuming forage, they need that extra help in the gizzard to digest it and get whatever nutrients they can get from it, although not usually very much. You get more from the younger forage than the older. Free range with choice feeding, which I alluded to earlier. A lot of research is being done by Ann Fanatico at Appalachia State University. She provides separate feeders for energy, protein, minerals, and vitamin feedstuffs. So she looked at separate feeders given together with cracked corn, whole wheat, soybean meal, fish meal, crushed oyster shell, kelp meal, bone meal, and trace mineral salt. And the chickens choose which of those things they want to have, and they found that the individuals will eat different amounts, but they'll all meet their nutrient needs. And so this lends itself to using feed ingredients that have been raised on the farm, which in Europe, that is a major factor for organic poultry production. I'm hoping to get her to give a presentation on this next year, along with black soldier fly larvae that she's been working with as well, but I haven't heard back yet. So it's on my schedule to try and get her for next year. Sprouted feedstuffs is also getting popular. Only a portion of the grains in the feed are actually sprouted, so like 5% of the diet. It's unlikely to be worth the time and effort for corn and maize, since they are really high in digestibility, but they do have that phytate content. And sprouting, some of it has been shown to increase the mineral availability slightly. But the main area where sprouting is useful is with the alternative grains. So wheat, barley, millet, sorghum, buckwheat, oats, all which have these anti-nutritional factors. Sprouting them tends to overcome the anti-nutritive components of them. And so incorporating different amounts of these alternative grains, some sprouted, some not, can help with increasing the availability of the amino acids, vitamins, and trace minerals in the grains. So here we got sprouted buckwheat, sprouted oats and wheat. It doesn't have to be just one type of grain. You can mix different ones together. Legumes have also been found to be useful if a portion of them is sprouted. So depends on which. Some can be included at 5%. Sprouted soybeans can replace 30% of the soybeans in the feed, so you can use most of them. Some of the pulses, the black gram, green gram, wild gram, you can use 5% of the feed being sprouted. Pulses, field peas, cowpeas, chickpeas, sweet lupins, all have shown to have nutritional improvements by sprouting. But with sprouting, you have to be really careful that mold does not develop, because that will ruin it all and you'll have to throw it out. Otherwise, you could get mycotoxins. You have to watch out for bacterial growth. You don't want Clostridium botulinum causing botulism and that sort of thing. Fermentation is one that I'm not overly excited about. It can improve the nutritional value of some of the unconventional feed ingredients. So depending on the ingredient, it can lower the fiber content, increase the protein and lipid content, improve vitamin availability, improves the solubility of the protein so that it's more available. But the main benefit is that lactic acid bacteria, which is used in the fermentation, produces lactic acid and other organic acids, and they are the major roles in the beneficial effects of fermentation. You have to watch out again for mold and bacterial growth and all the other things that can go wrong if you don't do it right. So fermentation has its place, but I would investigate it very deeply before you pick an ingredient or a feed to ferment. Basically, fermentation is using the carbohydrates up, and so you're reducing the energy content of a feed. So whole feed fermentation to me makes no sense. So again, my name is Dr. Jacquie Jacob. There's my email. I am a coordinator for the E-Extension Small and Backyard Flock Community of Practice. And there's our website and a Facebook page. So if I stop sharing, let me see. How about to heat grain growth to a lower? Again, the treatment of grains and legumes depends on the particular grain, and it's not to lower the phytate content. That's what phytase is for. Heating them is basically to inactivate some of the, well, especially for the legumes, some of the anti-nutritional factors. Some grains have anti-nutritional factors in them that cause an increase in intestinal viscosity. It makes it more thick. And so when they poop, they tend to have it stuck to the butt. So you get pasty butt, especially in younger birds. How long to boil depends on what you're boiling. Is there a list of what not to feed chickens? I didn't have time to go into that in great detail. I think that would have to be one of its own things. Just to say, some say avocados, but the research doesn't support that. Anything in excess could be a problem. So there are lists of poisonous plants. I think they're only poisonous if eaten in excess, and most of the chickens aren't going to eat it anyway. So you gotta watch out for that. So Pam, are there any veggies that you would recommend or tell us to stay away from? Cabbage is good. Peas and beans depends on the type. If they're boiled, that's going to help. You don't want to have too much raw, because that can cause the anti-nutritional factors. And beans, they have things that can cause flatulence in us and as well as them. Rutabagas during the winter as entertainment, sure, why not? Are there equivalent products for inhibiting mold in the air? I'm not sure of any of that. Suppose there is a roof leak in the past and you cannot get rid of the black mold from showing up on the walls. That's beyond me. You'd have to ask a pest management specialist that deals with black mold. There must be an inhibitor they can find somewhere. I mostly looked at things for feeding chickens. I didn't really look at inhibiting mold in the area. How would you feed this block out? In a tray at the correct feeding level? No, the block, that block, I assume you're talking about that flock block. No, you can just put it out anywhere. They're not going to waste it because they're pecking at it to get the stuff. They are going to blunt their beak a little bit to help with feather pecking. It's not going to be the main source of the feed. So my mind went blank. A lot of people, like, if they're free ranging and it's winter and they can't go outside, sometimes they put them in the house just to keep the chickens amused so that they don't, start feather pecking when they can't be out free ranging. It just, does that getting them away from each other. How would a person utilize DGS if close to an ethanol plant? That would depend on what kind of DGS it is, whether it's dried, whether it has solubles, that sort of thing. So maybe we'll get a webinar on the whole thing itself. Broken rice sounds like raw uncooked. The things I have seen said that broken rice is fine raw. What is the most typical calcium additive in commercial poultry feed in the US? As I said, limestone, dicalcium phosphate are most commonly used. You also get oyster shell. Those are the main sources that you get. You can buy oyster shell to feed on the side. Chickens can have a calcium appetite. Every hen has a different requirement for calcium. And so by having it on the side, if they need it, they'll eat it. If they don't need it, they won't. Do not use oyster shell as grit, though, because of the high calcium content. It will cause health problems because of excess calcium intake. So hope that answered everybody's questions. Those are the ones I see there. We'll have to come up with the things. It's really hard to say what not to feed. Chickens are omnivores. They often recommend not feeding meat, when you're doing kitchen scraps. But if it's, cooked, it's not a food safety issue. They can digest it. They might have trouble eating it if the pieces are too big because they don't have teeth. Let's say the whole avocado thing didn't make sense to me. Chickens can, pretty much eat anything. You have to watch out for, high cellulose forages because they cannot digest cellulose. There's not much that they can't eat. So I went well over time. I am so sorry about that. If you have any meets your needs at a lower cost that you can make a profit with the interior quality of the US, formally the ration itself brings more guarantee. True. But anytime you are mixing your own feed, you have to factor in your labor, equipment, and all that sort of thing as well. As somebody else said, don't forget your time. Pam said, yes. So if you're looking for alternatives, it's got to be worthwhile. So, what is your why? If you're a backyard flock owner and you get a lot of kitchen scraps and table scraps, then, why not give them to your chickens? You just have to be careful how you use it and, make sure that you don't have any I wouldn't mix grit into the feed. I'd leave it out free choice, depending on what you're feeding. If you're foraging, they might be picking up their own pebbles or whatever, depending on what your yard or range looks like. Typically, you don't have to mix grit. If they need it, they'll eat it. And they'll need it at different times, because the grit will eventually wear down in the gizzard and pass, and so it has to be replaced. So depending on the time and everything else, the grit should be free choice. Are there any other questions? This was recorded, and the recording should be up either later today or early tomorrow morning, hopefully before the July 4th weekend. And again, if you We post all upcoming and past webinars on our website. If you want to look at past ones, if you are looking for something you don't see in our past ones, email me and I'll see what I can do. I'm already working on next year's webinars. I have come up with a couple of interesting choices. I was watching a University of Kentucky person talk at the, what do they call it? From the forestry department, anyway, the animal wildlife guys. And I managed to get a speaker for rat snakes. We tend to think of rat snakes as a, you know, a pest that's a predator almost, because they like eggs and chicks and that sort of thing. But rat snakes do have a place because they are good at controlling. Yeah, just because they'll eat it doesn't mean it's good for them. Yeah. Yes, glass beads. Yeah, you have to watch out for the worms. That's not a food item I was thinking about, but they'll eat that. They'll eat wire. They'll eat just about anything. I'm having her talk about rat, snakes, and poultry, how to keep them out of your barn, but to also have the beneficial effects of rat snakes in controlling some of the other pests that you can have around a poultry barn. I'm trying to get Ann Fanatico to talk about her black soldier fly studies and the choice feeding studies. I need to give a talk on salmonellosis and backyard poultry. Every year at this time, we have outbreaks of human salmonellosis related to backyard poultry. Please don't bring your chickens in the house. Please don't kiss your chickens. Please watch your kids to make sure they're not sucking their thumbs after they have handled chickens. Make sure that you don't have the chickens pooping in your backyard and then having your kids play on that poop. There's a lot of different reasons why we have outbreaks of human salmonellosis in all 48 states. Well, they don't get a lot in Hawaii for some reason, but 48 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico have all had problems this year. So we're going to talk about that. And incorporating chickens into schools is another topic that I have a speaker for. So if you can think of anything that you would like to hear about that would help you, please email me, let me know. And thank you, everybody. I'm going to stop the recording.